It was long.
Long, but you look fresh.
Very long. We're probably more on the
enough,
plane,
you look
more on the
fresh.
plane than in London. What? Okay, we're on out.
Ask Mommy if she wants us to record it.
Ellie sent it to her. She sent it. Okay. Has been sent to her. Just tell her she should come on. Okay, tell her to come on.
Did you just say you're right there and say shut up? Why would you tell someone to shut up?
Give her 1 more minute, okay?
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining our Pirkei Avot Shiur in honor of my dad, the Elul Nishmat Harav Avram Chaim ben Eliezer Yaakov, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, and Goldie Miriam bat Avram Chaim Zichrona Livracha. May they both intercede on high on behalf of each one of us. Over to you, Dvor.
Thank you, Chai. Just get myself organized over here. Can you see me, Chai? The way you are.
I can see you, yes.
Okay, very good. Okay, welcome. Thanks for joining us again. Truth is that I'm going to be away next week, so I think that this will be the last mission for the season. So I'll take the opportunity to wish you all a Vrijdag and Chanukah, and it's a very special time of the year indeed. We're told that Hashem, when He created the world, He created it with a supernal light, which He subsequently saw was not fit for the world to use. It was too holy, it was too great, and He genazoy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to use it. He hid it away. Where did He hide it? He hid it in the words of the Torah. He locked away the light in the words of the Torah. That's why it says in the first parasha of Bereshis, Yehi Or, Vayi Or, 5 times. In the 5 books of the Torah, that's why Hashem concealed this light. If a person is zeiche to toil over the Torah, he is zeiche to open the letters and to connect with the light. And then wherever he is, he brings a little bit of that supernal light into the world through his Torah. We are taught that also in Chanukah, there's the light of Chanukah shine with the glow of the candles for certain. They also have their own glow. Light of the Chanukah licht, something of the supernal light, shegenazoi latzadikim, shines again in Chanukah. And Chanukah has a tremendous propensity, it has a koyach to bring light to the world. Hasidic idea is that the menorah is lit lower than 10 tefachim, and it shouldn't be too high either. It can't be higher than 20 amas. Then people don't notice it. It shouldn't be out there somewhere, the light of Chanukah, the Kedusha, the light of the Torah. It shouldn't be so far removed that you can't even, you don't notice it. 20 amas, 10 meters roughly, is too high. And shouldn't be higher even than 10 tefachim. It should be lower than 10 tefachim, which is really a different rishus. It's bringing this light of Kedusha, this otherworldly light, to the lower part of the Olam Hazeh, to the lower rishuyas, to bring light to every part of one's life. And that's very much the Chanukah story. And no finer way to do that then through studying the Mishnayos of Pirkei Avos again and again, and each time one reads the Mishnah and thinks about the Mishnah, there's a new light, because it's an unlimited light. So you never fully unpackage it. You never fully get everything out. So you keep going through it again and again, thinking the ideas over. That's the Torah. That's particularly on the time like Hanukkah. It's a particular time for studying the Torah of ideas, the Torah of Musar, of this special light of Hanukkah. So we were learning this Mishnah of Hillel, and it's really an incredible Mishnah. And I want to share with you again my take on the Mishnah of B'siyata Dishmaya. It seems to be a random collection. It seems to be, but it's not at all. It's unbelievable Mishnah. Hu haya omer. It's Hillel's irony. He says, you're born, you're created with an innate need to achieve something significant, something great. Everybody has marbe. Now, where do you attach this identity of yourself? That's the question. He goes through them all and he pops the balloons and he shows us the irony of each one. So he started off, maybe basar, maybe you think your first identity is to grow the body, to strengthen it, mastery and the pleasures of the body. And he says, very nice, but very limited in their overall ability to capture the life of a human being. Very limited, as he says in the Mishnah. Then he says, okay, so a level beyond that is you turn it into money. It becomes a market success, an economic. You realize life depends on finances. You need money to, money equals power. So maybe that's going to be the identity, and that's going to solve the question of where you should succeed. And he says, yes, it's good to have money, just as it's good to have health and self-mastery of the body and a certain amount of the pleasures of the body, but also wealth has limitations, and often it generates more problems. So you can't think that that's the ideal solution. Then he goes, third level, maybe you'll think it's wives. Remember we said that no sages of the Mishnah or the Gemara had more than one wife. True kings did, and in biblical times, individuals did. And that Aruch HaShulchan says, that's quite right. It was meant for them. But no sage in the entire Talmud ever did that. And that's no avenue to look for your key identity, because again, they create hosts of other problems. Then where do we go from there? Household. Build up thousands of employees, big companies. No, he says the more employees, whether they're maidservants, manservants, the more problems. That too should never be your central identity. You need to do that also, but that's not who you are. So he's taken each one that you would think, oh, this is a logical key to success in life. This is where I should be focusing on developing my identity. And he said, don't do that. You need it. You need to be good in it. You need to succeed in it, but it's not really the key to your identity, to where you place all your koach. Then he said, well, let's go to the other side. First four were the materials. The second four, marbe Torah, marbe chai. He said, you would think, naturally, that to become a studious person means to withdraw somewhat from life. That's not life. That's something of hermetically sealed off. You detached a little. And Hillel said, aha, that's the irony. This is one of the ironies of Hillel. He says, Dafka, there, in that, what the world thinks would be a detachment, is where you really plug into the makor of all life, the source of all life. Torah, you were born with a need for greatness, meant to be slaked through the pursuit of Hashem's own Torah. That which Hashem uses, so to speak, the Gemara says, Sha'ashua, it's Hashem's fun. That's meant to be the place where you seek your ultimate identity and success. Marbe Torah, a person who generates much Torah, Marbe Chaim, he generates much life. Some say, some Rishonim say it means life in the eternal world. As the Gemara tells us, that if you cite the Torah of a scholar, even after 120 years, he gets a great pleasure from the fact that people are reciting an idea that he shared, some of his Torah. So Torah is marbe chaim. It extends life, it enhances life, it adds life even after life. Besides the fact that the afterlife itself, the Rambam tells us, the sage, he says, tzaddikim yoshvim ba'atrosehem b'rosheim. The tzaddikim sit before HaKadosh Baruch Hu with crowns on their head. The Rambam says it's not literal. It doesn't mean that the sages have golden crowns on their head and that tzaddikim have golden crowns. It says the crown is a symbol for your wisdom. It crowns your mind. It's the wisdom that you've attained. Ultimate wisdom, not the wisdom of carpentry, and not even the wisdom of computers. Not even the very beneficial wisdom of medicine. No, that's not the wisdom that you need in that world. It's the wisdom of knowing Hashem, studying His Torah, because in His Torah He told us what He thinks. The more you know what He thinks, the clearer you understand it, the deeper you understand it, the more you know of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Himself. To know His Torah is to know Him. And therefore the Rambam writes that when the tzaddikim yoshim, the atorosehim, each one has a crown. That crown is made up of antennas. It's an ability to accept, to discern, to enjoy the presence of the Shekhinah, all that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is radiating in a way that we can't even understand, we can't even relate to, but which, however it is, it's some form of shir, some form of Torah, and one has to develop a taste for it. Marbe Torah, a person who generates, he uses his life and he devotes his life to the pursuit of Torah. Such a person is Marbe Chaim. He enhances his Marbe, he enhances, he makes grander, he makes greater, he magnifies life even in that world, because that's the currency of that world. They don't have pounds, they don't have dollars, they don't have euros in that world. They only have the currency of understanding HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Torah, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's values, which obviously we know. Goodness, kindness, mercy, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu does to us. He's a giver. That's what that world is. So it's Marbe Chaim, but not only in Olam Haba, it's Marbe Chaim. Even in this world, a world experienced, a life in this world experienced through this prism of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's own Torah, it makes the world much greater, much bigger. It's no longer little particles flying around, little electrons in a meaningless way. It puts it together in such a grand scale, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's own world. Through the Torah, the world becomes grander, more meaningful. A car is just a car, unless you put it through the prism of Torah and you realize that this car, this color car, this exact model of a car is a gift to you from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything that you have suddenly takes on a different level of godless. Marbe Chaim, that's included in Hillel. Said you think that a person is going to become a Ben Torah, he is detached. His world's nebuch. Opposite. His world just became exponentially greater, more vibrant, more exciting, more vivid, more real. That's what the great Hillel taught us. He taught Klal Yisrael forever. In the genes. Marbe Torah, Marbe Chaim. It's life enhancing. It's vibrant. Father often used to comment about the Gedolei Yisrael. He sees reaching ages of 98, 100 and still teaching. The pasuk says, Oid Yenuvun b'Seiba. They will be refreshed fresh and sated, even into way old age, because they have touched the fountain of youth, the fountain of immortality is Marbe Torah, Marbe Chaim. And that's Hillel's presenting as the irony. You would have thought, a child would have thought, it's physical self-mastery, then intellectual self-mastery, financial, economic self-mastery, political self-mastery. Hillel debunked all of that. He said, you would have thought that the furthest thing to success in life is becoming a lifelong student. Hillel said, opposite. It opens up life in all its vivid color. Gives them length of days and quality of experience, because it gives a different paradigm through which to experience on a scale of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, as we discussed. And so this is the irony of Hillel. And then he goes on to the next level. So the first one, Marbe Torah, Marbe Chaim. The more you learn, the more you understand. Then he goes, the next level is Marbe Chochma, Marbe Yeshiva. It's not just about your personal learning. It's Marbe Yeshiva. Person who's Marbe Yeshiva. He builds yeshivas, which I think is one of the greatest tributes that we wrote on my dad's epitaph. He was a Marbe Yeshivas. He was Zoche. There was no institutional learning in the country. There, obviously, Torah has never left the Jewish people. There were always people learning. Even South Africa, there were a few pockets of From Yidden. Institutionalized Torah learning only took off. He's built primary schools, high schools, girls' schools, nursery schools. Yeshiva Gedolah, Marbe Yeshiva Kipshutoi. Marbe Yeshiva, Marbe Chochma. Again, it's Hillel's irony. You would have thought that if I want to learn and I want to achieve this level of relationship with Hashem and this full color relationship with life through the Chochma of Hashem, then I should shun others and sit and study quietly, my own locked away. Another of Hillel's ironies, he said, everything that the world looks like is often wrong. Marbe Yeshiva, Marbe Chochma. The more you invest in building yeshiva is a place where people debate and argue, and they don't sit on their own quietly in a corner of a library. It's a yeshiva, Marbe Chochma. It magnifies. It makes more grand the Torah. The Gemara tells us that Avraham Avinu zaken v'yoshev b'yeshiva. Yitzchak Avinu zaken v'yoshev b'yeshiva. Even when they were old men, Yaakov Avinu, reading this parasha, zaken v'yoshev b'yeshiva. They always maintained yeshivas. True, they didn't have the exact same structure as we have today. Our yeshivas today are all the brainchild of Reb Chaim Mivolozhin. He set the prototype, the paradigm of all subsequent yeshivas under the direction of his great mentor, Adonenu Hagro, the Vilna Gaon. But they had yeshivas, the Gemara says. There never was a Jewish people without yeshivas. What was the essence of the yeshiva? It was a place where people came together to discuss, to debate, to hear a shir, to give shirim. And through that process, the Torah became greater. You create a culture of debate, culture of a depth and a clarity of learning through hearing other opinions. In fact, we're busy reading this parsha by Vayeshev, when Yosef tragically is sold into Golos. And then when finally Yaakov hears that Yosef is alive in subsequent parshas, he says, "Ve'es Yehuda shalach lefanav goishna lahoros." He sent his son Yehuda before him when Yaakov was still in Eretz Canaan. He sent Yehuda first as the vanguard. When Yosef sent, "Come join me, I will look after you in Egypt." The first thing he did, he sent his son Yehuda Why? Rashi says, Lahoiros, it says in the pasuk, not to clarify the best hotel and the best suburb for them to live in, although that was part of it. Lahoiros lefanav Greishna, to build a Beis HaTalmud, to build a place for learning, a yeshiva. Yaakov said, if me and my family are going down to Mitzrayim, the first thing we need before we even get there is there should be a place of a vibrant culture of debate of Torah, because that's the heart of the Jewish people. If yeshivas are strong, Jewish communities throughout the Golus have been strong. When the yeshivas are weak, not marbech chokhmah, the chokhmah depletes, and the community chas v'shalom also wanes. It's the heart, the pumping heart of the Jewish people. So the first thing that Yaakov did was send the yeshiva. One of my family's great friends, and I've mentioned this before, said to my dad many years ago, Rabbi Tanzer, it's a bit of a pity that so many of the former organizations have moved into Glen Hazel, because look at the competition. In the old days, there was only Glen Hazel Shul. So what did Dad answer? Our Mishnah, Marbe Torah, Marbe Chaim. The more Torah, the greater the Torah, the more life. The first part of it. He said, let's not start up with that Mishnah. And we could add the second part, Marbe Yeshiva, even other institutional learning. So you may think they're taking away from you. This was what my dad was really saying. It looks like they're taking away from you, but the truth is, as the expression has it, when the tide rises, it's good for everybody, because all the ships rise. So if somebody is raising the tide, raising the bar of learning, raising the banner of learning, it's got to be good for the entire Jewish community. That's what Hillel said. You would think, you might have thought that to achieve greatness in Chokhmah, you should lock yourself away, secluded, and pursue your studies according to your great intellect. And Hillel said, ironically enough, that's not the way the world works. Dad often used to tell me from his Rebbe, William Meir Bloch, the more you give to other people, the more Torah you will get. And it's not only Marbe Yeshiva. Some of the Rishonim explain, Marbe Yeshiva means the more you hone your learning skills, not just the facts, the skills, your ability to learn like a Ben Torah, to read between the lines. Marbe Chokhmah. That's when the Chokhmah becomes great. Even the Rav himself, by giving over, his own learning becomes enhanced. No man is an island. There's a tragic and great story told in the Gemara in Shabbos about one of the greatest of the Tanoim. His name was Rabbi Nehorai. It comes from the word Meir in Hebrew Aramaic. Nehorai is Meir. He enlightened the eyes of all the sages. He was considered the greatest of the sages. According to some, it was Rabbi Meir. And once, upon his traveling, he traveled through a small town, and he was taken by it. It was a beautiful town, maybe somewhere, hot springs, the Chamin, the Yumsus, and the Chamra de Fragisa. It had special vintage wine and special hot springs. He said, it's a geschmack, this place. You know, if I could stay here for a while with this good wine to relax me after a hard day's toiling and learning, and these hot springs to relax me, it wouldn't hurt my learning. It would be ganz geschmack. So he discussed it with his Rebbetzin, and she said, yeah, you could do it. So he said, but I'm worried. No, so far from the rest of the sages, from the Talmidim, we give shiurim to, who we are debating learning with. His wife gave him the tragic answer. She should have been his better half, saying, Ezechaim, Meirke, go back to the yeshiva, do your job, we'll come here for holidays. But she didn't say that. She said, listen, you are the Talmid Chacham, and they will come to you wherever you are. They will need you. They will come to you. Magia lecha. You sit and learn here. You will say your chidushim, and the sages of Israel will come to you because they need you. It never happened. The sages had an infrastructure. They had a place, a Makom Torah, with a culture of Torah, and a culture of learning, and a culture of debate, and a culture that one twig burns a fire. They all unite each other. That's what a bonfire is. They're all much greater than any single one. The flame is much, much greater through their combined, even though they're little twigs. A number of years later, he went to visit the yeshiva in Yavne, the great academy in Yavne, and obviously everyone knew him, the great Rabbi Nohorai, and they gave him an aliyah to read from the Torah. It was Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh, we read the passage in the Torah, Chodesh Hazeh Lachem Rosh Chodashim. This month is a new moon. In those days, when you received an aliyah to the Torah, you didn't only recite the brachas, as we do today, and have a professional Balkori lane for you. Each person was expected to be fluent enough in Torah that he could learn it by himself. So obviously, Rabbi Nohorai was expected to learn by himself. He made his brachas and he began to learn the pasuk. Instead of reading the letters, the words, HaChodesh Hazeh Lachem, he misread them. It's just slight differences on each letter. HaChodesh became HaCharesh. Hazeh became Hayah. Lachem became Libam. It's just a tiny difference between a chaf and a beis. But the sentence means something dramatically different. This renewal is a sign for you, the Jewish people, of renewal, rebirth, rebirth, which is what the pasuk is saying. Hacharesh ya libam, their hearts became deaf. That's how he read it. And it turned out he had forgotten his learning because of his error in isolating himself, alienating himself from the sages. He had forgotten his learning. They held so much of Rabbi Nohorai that the sages got together, they all prayed for him, and his learning was restored, but the message was taught. Not in isolation, not alienated. Marbe yeshiva, marbe chochma. When you have a yeshiva, a place for a community to sit and toil in Torah, to argue in Torah, that's where the greater chochma comes from, and no other way. Of course, it's a great question. How could such a great Gaon in Israel, one of the cleverest in the entire nation, not know how to read? He forgot his learning to the point. Why did they give him an aliyah? He didn't even know how to read. You have to say that he did know how to read. He didn't forget that much, but his learning was off. It wasn't what it should have been. And it came out in this minor error. Somehow he didn't have the siyata d'shmaya to see the words right. Perhaps it was an older Sefer Torah, whatever. It was a dramatic clarion call to him. Next of Hillel's lines, and I think we're going to conclude, we'll draw quickly to an end here. Marbe eitza, marbe tevuna. The person, you would think, let's take the other side, you would think that if I'm going to seek counsel and ask other people their opinions, I'm a nebuch, I've got nothing to say myself. It's a weakness, it's a sign of weakness. He just said opposite. The more you ask counsel, the more you seek, the greater your understanding and the greater your insight. We tend to rely on our knee-jerk reaction, and the truth is, get somebody else's opinion. That's the wisdom of the sages. Always learn with the chavrusa. That allows you to hear your voice. You've got two ears, one to hear your opinion, and the other to hear somebody else's opinion. When you got, so we don't need 13 ears though, but when you got 2 ears and you can hear 2 polar sides of the coin, you're best able to navigate it. So this was the great wisdom of Hillel. You would think that think it through on your own. You don't have to ask everyone everything. Hillel says, and then you'll be smart and you'll be definite. Wrong. You'll have a superficial, monolithic understanding. You need to hear the view of somebody else. That's the greatness of learning Chavrusa. Hear somebody else's advice, even if you're not going to listen. Listen, it's going to give a different depth to your own opinion. Marbe tzedakah, marbe shalom. With this we will conclude. The more tzedakah, the greater the shalom in the world. Listen to this. Hillel is saying, you would think the more tzedakah, I'm going to lose something. Or maximum I'm going to give the guy something to eat. Israel said, no, you're not going to lose anything from tzedakah. The greater the charity, the greater the giving, the greater the shalom for everyone. When you give somebody a gift of money, a tzedakah, you're not just giving him money, you're giving him hearts. You're giving him a good feeling. It's giving out goodwill. It's creating shalom. That goodwill is going to come back to you. Ultimately, it's the only thing you've really got, because all the other economies are subject to the vagaries of economies and towns, but not that. That the Rambam taught is one of the physical laws of life. You give out, it's coming back to you, not just the money, the goodwill, because ultimately when you give tzedakah, the tzedakah is judged by how much chesed it was given with. If you give the tzedakah with a grimace, it had great tzedakah, little chesed. If you give little tzedakah, but with a ma'or panim, with a shining countenance, you've given great spirit, you've given shalom, and that's the key what Hillel's telling us. Marbe tzedakah, marbe shalom. It's coming back to you. You're creating a world of greater shalom, but don't think you will lose from it. You won't lose. You will only gain from it. And this is Hillel's irony. So the sages taught us, tzedakah tatzil. Tzedakah will save, always. Why? Because you give out something, shlach lach makol, send it out. You don't know when it's coming back. When you need it the most, it's going to come back. Aser ta'aser. It's going to bring you back wealth and good feeling, happiness. My father, the poster that the school made of my dad, they used this following pasuk: Roidef tzedakah v'chesed. If a person looks for opportunities to give tzedakah and to perform chesed, he's going to find what's going to come back to him, chayim, the blessings of life, tzedakah. His world became bigger. You gave out a few prutas, you gave out a few rands, many rands, you get him back hundreds of times greater. You get him back lots of shalom. You're getting back what you give with a smile, is going to come back to you with abundant chesed. And that's what Hillel's final thought for today is marbe tzedakah, marbe shalom. This is what our Abba Zatzal achieved very much in his years. He became a paradigm for giving, and then it was just remarkable to see how much of it came back to him. Thank you very much for being with us.